Tov Kuf Yud Tes Sif Beis. This is a very technical halacha, but for those of you who know what a kerosene lamp is, you'll understand what we're talking about. For those of you who have no idea what a kerosene lamp is, won't know what we're talking about. Kerosene lamp is a lamp that there's a wick, a broad, thick wick that goes down into the kerosene and draws up the oil, the kerosene, and it has a wheel that looks like gear that goes through it, and when you turn the outside, it causes that wick to rise, or you can have it go in. And if you have it rise, you get a bigger piece of wick burning, and you have a bigger fire. And if you have it, you roll it in, so you have a smaller fire, and it burns for longer. So this is what we're talking about. Now, we have to understand the Gemara Beitza says that a person who's mistapik from the ner is chayiv mishum machaba. A person who takes oil out of a candle that's burning, that is an act of kibui. Now, why is it an act of kibui? It's a machlekes rishonim. If it's because when you're taking it out, the fire gets dull, or because you're taking away life of the amount of time that the fire is going to be going. Okay? Now, that's a piece of information that you have to know before we read the halacha. Lahatos ner kedei laharchik Hashem min hapsila. If you try to remove the closeness of the shemen to the psila, choshev kiboy v'aser. V'chein aser likach psila miner daluk. Afilu litnit l'kleyacher. You're not allowed to take a lit wick out of one fire, even if you're planning to put it into a different cup of oil, because it's called going out when you're taking it out, and just because you're going to relight it by putting it into a different cup, that doesn't help. Yontif, this is Yontif. And you're allowed to add more wicks to ner doilik, kedei sheyaver harbe v'yichbe mahera. I can add more wicks into my thing, which will cause there to be a bigger fire. In other words, what's going on is I have a room that people have to go to sleep, and there's a light in there, a kerosene light or something like that in there, and I want them to be able to go to sleep. So how do I get it to go out early? I put more wicks into the cup, and it'll go out more early. It'll go out earlier, and that's 100% permissible, provided the Mishnah Berurah is going to say that we're benefiting from the light in the meantime. But even though you're not allowed to cause the wick to go out, but if you did it, we call it some kind of an haroma, common thing, they made the fire bigger, so therefore it will extinguish earlier, that is permissible to be done. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Chashav kiboy ve'eno tzarich lemer she'asur l'stapik shemen min haner b'shah shu darik. That's a shirasur. The kivon shemeser shemen ma'at me'aner. When you take out a little oil from the fire, ayadei zeh keha oiroi ksas v'havi zeh kemachabe. Now, I just want to share with you from the questions of today's generation, which I think that there are many poskim that are makel about this. I don't want to say something halacha l'maisa, but I do believe nowadays there are people who have floating wicks. If I take oil out of my cup with floating wicks, it does not affect in any way the relationship of the wick. Right? No, it's the physical relationship between the wick and the fuel stays exactly the same. So it's not like in other cases of oil. It's like you're taking it out of the bottom. What? Yeah, eventually it'll go out quicker, but there's nothing. Right, but it's not like when the old-fashioned things, when you took out shemen, it caused the wick to dim a little bit b'shas ma'isa.
When you put more wicks in, you increase the...
Right, the conflagration presently.
Right.
and which will cause it to go out eventually. Okay.
That might apply today in regard to the Shabbos clocks that you have, in regard to those things that you either pull or you do, to change the hour with the pins or something like that.
I'm willing to answer your question, but first I have to attack you. There's absolutely no connection.
No connection?
No, because that is a mechanical system that's designed that it should either be machaba or be madlik. And it's not, you're doing that, you're not machaba or madlik anything. All you're doing is setting up that something else should be machaba or madlik.
Well, no, it makes it go out, but go out.
It makes it go out, but you are not related.
You did it on Erev Shabbos.
You didn't do anything.
No, I'm saying if it does it on Yom Tov or whatever.
Yeah, if you would change that, you're not doing anything. Now, you're causing that it will happen,
Right.
but you're not doing anything.
So that makes it better or worse?
That makes it that you're not doing it.
So that makes it
Now
more
you-
likely that you're allowed to?
That makes it more likely that you should be allowed to do it. Yes.
Yom Tov or Shabbos?
Yes. Anyantif. Now,
You set it into a machine and
now there's a question. I'll just, these are the questions which need much discussion. Rabbi Yashiv holds that any system that you do, that there is no other factors besides for lightning striking, that it'll have to happen, that's called your Maisa. It's not called a Grama. And this is how he explains the difference of Magen Avraham and answers Evan Oizer's question about a windmill and a leech. How these two things, why one is called a Maisa, one is not called a Maisa. But Rav Shlomo Zalman doesn't go like that, and he says that these things are called Grama. And I'll just use an example, which to me I think is the simplest example. Become a Medina, and your birthday, right? Become a Medina. The Chazon Ish, who in history goes down as the exact opposite of what he was. The Chazon Ish was the Mekel, and in Mitzvah Atluyis Ba'aretz, yes, Chazon Ish was a very big Mekel. Mitzvah Atluyis Ba'aretz, you will find consistently the Chazon Ish was the Mekel and Rav Kook was the Machmer. Consistently. Oh, that could be, but that's the bottom line. So it depends what the subject that you're talking about is. Now, one of the big discussions that there was at that time was about in the kibbutzim milking the cows on Shabbos. And the Chazon Ish writes in his tshuva that if a person puts the vacuum on the udders of the cow,
That was really automatic? No?
or they already had such a kind of thing, that's called a groma. That's not called a maisa. And therefore his mekel with a guy knows what he was. That's like he's the earliest one that addresses Rabbi Yashiv's situation and says the exact opposite. So I'm not right now here to paskin the question. I'm just pointing out where these things are negea.
Right, so you can't take the oil out, but you can add more whips.
That's what the halacha Shulchan Aruch says. But it has to be, and we're going to learn the Mishnah Berurah. It's going to say that you're allowed to be hoiseb psilos. We'll get there in a minute. Okay, we'll just see the Mishnah Berurah right now. Hoiseb psilos. V'hu adin demuter lichvol ner shayva v'adlikoi. Okay, shemachav mahayim bir halacha. Did mechaven shecha ba'oyer alav l'kuli amahu ve'enu ela rak l'das yesh matirin in Sif Gimel, which we're going to see soon. That they used to have folded in half, and then you would. It's the same thing, but it would burn out quicker. Cutting off half, there's a different problem because then you're over on Makil Patish because you made another candle. So, but if you folded it in half, it's a beeswax, right? And you're burning both ends at the same time. It'll go out in half the time. Okay. ועשה לך ממנר שושב ונעתיקה בקויסו מהדרגה זה משים מריח והיינו שיששפנו להחליקו על השטח. All those things are aser. Okay. Now I'm going to read right now Bir Halacha, which is fascinating. And even though it's not such a relevant halacha l'maisa, but the concept is great. He discusses the lamp that I discussed, that a lantern. You know how a lantern works? You know how it works? That it has the gear that right, and that wheel picks up. Right, okay. Look at the Bir Halacha. Al kain bener acher. Al kain belampim shalanu be'esh shenismayet haneft, when there's not much kerosene left. Yesh noagin lahatir hashroif. A shroif is a screw. V'lahagbiya oisay ma'at im apsila. Shahoifchin l'teicha neft. You raise the wick a little so that you can add more neft. V'tzichin al kalponim lizor shelo lahoitzi legami apsila min haneft. You have to be careful not to remove it totally from the neft. That's a shirasar. V'afilu das hatas if gotten dalit. Eliyatochu k'saf b'apsila ma'at neft sheyesha mishuli halem. It should at least be partially submerged in the neft. The v'oifen zeh kalponim ledas hatas shari k'mo she'taknu b'Mishnah Berurah. V'gam b'oifen zeh ein heter bor kol kach diyesh chokim al din hatas. K'mo she'kasal b'shar tzin v'ochen yesh oid achroinim dekami b'shitaso v'ein al ken ein limchos b'yad ha'mekilin, that this kiboy you're doing in order to make a or. No, this is not kiboy to put something out, it's to make an or. Shadin hatas gufo she'taknu Mishnah Berurah yesh shor l'hakol. There are reasons we make it like the Taz for other reasons than the Taz says. Masha enke belam ben ein shayach swara diyesh lahem al mashi yismach aval agbias apsil legamri min haneft bevade also, to remove the wick out of the neft altogether in order to pour in more oil. That's for sure. Also, v'rak im kol haneft legamri v'lei nisharak lachlus apsila. If it's just a wet wick, ozei nisabag ba'asoi shahu ner dola kedei sheyatich hashabu yachzer lamala, because you're not affecting how much it can draw up, because it's not in anything anyways. V'chei yasek ham b'ama ad sheychale v'yisar b'mehera v'lamad zeh miribu psil shemater amo v'lefi ma shekasavnu kan shebekivu and kedei sheychale mehera gam shom aser kei nirali. Okay, however, Isa Nashab my Morcha Shedochus Vorov, Vehe Mividor Kishamata Haner Mahati Chashav Letipos Oretz, Veze Bevade Oser, because you're causing the to go out and it's not going to be part of the fire anymore. Dimaita Shave Umachabe. Why Morcha Mitzad Leesa, Auflat Dasataisis, the Mahaka Ora Yedesha to also Vakachal Oretz, El Achakach Maver Yoiser. If you're going to cause it to go out, even though it's going to become a bigger fire later on, it's still officer. You're not having it go to the ground. But you're not going to lose the oil. Okay, I just would like to say, now look at the Sharet Zion Tez Zayin. The kivon she'bagbiya zu eina mechabe legamri es or haner. When you raise up the wick, you're not putting it out altogether. Sharei mixas apsila nisheres munachas b'toch Hashem and idei agba zu yuchol aharbos oira yoiser yikshayim mekayim lefikach en kshash kiboy. Avshal yerabba b'chem Moshe chaychem lahachler. They say like the Taz v'lachein hanoye kemoiser ein limchos b'yodoi. The kivon shelo haya dolik yafa mipnei shapsila lo yotzos me'Hashem and ki ma'at. There wasn't at that time a very good fire. V'lo haya mokom le'echos ha'or ki im teku kishamat Hashem me'smayat or v'nechos or b'apsila yafa. Im kein kibuy zehu maver tekef. This kibuy itself is the act. It's not 2 steps. By being machabit, you're causing it to. In other words, you're causing it at the same time that it has less oil, it has more psila. Now, this is an important factor. Every single ner has 3 components that make it work: air, which is oxygen, psila, and oil. Now, the truth of the matter is, there is a purpose to the psila. The purpose of the psila is that the psila spreads the fuel thin enough that it has spontaneous combustion. That's exactly how it works. The oil burns on the wick. Okay? Now, sometimes, and we'll just use this as an example, you light a candle. What do you light? You light the wick. So a wick can sometimes be the fuel. What? What?
It burns.
Right. So what happens is, as the candle goes down, and the fire, the oil can't get all the way up that point. So there it becomes the fuel. That's exactly how a candle works. That's why you have no wick left when you're all done. Okay? So here, the hato, which causes it to become a lesser fire on the bottom, is causing it to become a bigger fire on the top because the wick is now burning. So therefore, that's not called mavir. Okay?
If I have a flashlight that has a higher setting and a lower setting, like emergency lights, so I have that.
Yeah.
Can I move it from the lower setting to the higher setting because I need more light?
First of all, I would just like to say, I like to say this all the time, from the worst psukim I ever gave in this shul was about this fan. Somebody asked me if you're allowed to make it isosceles on Shabbos. Okay? Now there are three different kinds of this fan. There are ones that have this thing and you put it down, and what it does is attaches gears and it causes it to whatever you call that. And there's one that has a string and you pull that and that puts the gear in place. And there's a third one that there's a electrical device that causes it to, and it's a totally electric thing. And somebody asked me about one that had one of these pull up and downs, and I said that you're allowed to do that according to many poskim. And then the next week I found that guy on Shabbos doing it to a different fan here on the one that's an electric one. And he said, well, you said you're allowed to do it. And I said, no, I never said that. You're allowed to do it to that one, not to this one. So you have to be very careful, about exactly what you're talking about. So, now, your flashlight between 1 and 2 is off.
Right.
So you're turning it off and then on.
Okay. So there are some that have like a dimmer kind of thing.
What?
There's more like a dimmer that it's continuous.
If you have something which is like a dimmer, then you'll be allowed to do that, yes. Yeah, that's...
What about a dimmer on the regular wall thing?
It's the same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah.
You're allowed to move it just brighter or down also?
No, we're learning. You're not allowed to make it lower.
Just brighter.
All right. Now, I would just say, all this is based on a assumption that I'm not really getting involved in your question exactly. That that your lamp is an eish, and that's what you're doing, right? If it's not eish, it's something else, then it's a different question.
So
Okay.
what can you reduce the gas on the stove?
Who says you can reduce the gas?
Question in last week's sheet, which was to do with someone's cooking on Yom Tov and the
Okay, so
burn.
we learned about that last week over here, and the answer to that is, first of all, you are allowed to lower a fire. It's a Gemara. You're allowed to lower a fire so that something should not burn. Now, and this is, could you get? Oh, I have it over here. No, this is a different tshuva. This is a fascinating tshuva.
Yom Tov, right?
Yeah. Rav Moshe has a tshuva if you have a choice to.
Oh, the Rosh to do one mitzvah, one.
Yeah, so it's in here. Right. Okay. So I actually, when I went home, I checked this out, and it was still where I thought it was. Where is it? All All right. Well, he has a tshuva over here where he discusses this issue. I'm gonna have to find it. Here's chometz. Here. Here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read a piece. It says a piece of a tshuva. L'haktonas eish hagaz b'yontif. That's the subject. Okay. V'lochev mizeh leka makor la'mogen Avrohom. Da'adrab hu neged mashmois harosh v'atur. V'achrech v'doram shaleka shum adifus. She'im ken adrab ha'yaser kiboy mehavora. She'kiboy molocha she'en tzricha l'gufa. Kiboy is you put the malacha deraisa of kiboy is to make pechom. It's not to turn off a fire. Okay, so if you're doing it to turn off a fire, and this is actually a very big machlokes today's poskim, if turning off your gas is a malacha deraisa or malacha derabanan, because your gas is not actually kiboy. What you happens when you turn off your gas, you're just not supplying any more fuel, and the reason why it goes out is because there's nothing happened, right? It just died, you know. No, it's not. Okay. Now here, Mishnah. Ach tzarich lefarish bekavonos hamogen Avrohom. Dilahaktin ha'esh shaboyer eitzim berov pa'amim tzarich lechabos harbe va'afilu k'shesagi b'kibo bakas achas gam kein tzarich lechabos b'harbe mekoymois v'avor nasa berov pa'amim b'pamachas. V'ribi pa'amim the oisa kiboy hu chamira mehavora shenasa b'pamachas.
What's the havara move?
Because when I ignite it, I ignite a lot of things at once. Better to do that.
In order, what's the purpose?
To cook something. And
instead of keeping, what's the kiboy doing that?
it's also to cook something, but I'm going to have to
turning on a new one instead of being
right. And this is Ramoshes, and this is all the places can say you're cooking something on Yontif, and probably lechatchila you should light another fire if you have to change the fire size.
The other one lower and lower the one you're cooking.
No, better to turn on the other one, just light it on a lower flame, than to lower the one that you're using. Right? Okay. That's
but that's not doing a lot of kiboy, but then you're only doing one. It's not like they.
Okay, but this is a.
One against one person.
Yeah, if you're just going to turn it once, I think that's Beseder. You know, but usually the people do it, they're busy fiddling with it. It's not it doesn't happen. If you know what you're doing, then it's the same thing.
Fiddle if some of it's going up then.
Yeah, but then you
It's up and then down.
all right.
What would be the din with, I remember when I was younger, the gaslighting, adjusting the gas lights. And I seem to
What's a gas light?
Gas light, gas mantle.
That's what we're discussing.
What,
No, do you use for light?
what's a gas mantle? I don't know.
When I was a kid, some places in England, they still use gas lighting. There's a gas light, a gas jet.
Okay.
And just lower or higher the gas.
Oh, for the light.
More or less light.
To make the light brighter. You
To make the light brighter, that you're allowed to do, but to make it dimmer, you're not.
Because I seem to remember, maybe 40 years ago, I saw people in B'nai Brak, maybe in the Shiva in B'nai Brak, I saw gas lights, gas jet.
Yes, they have them all the time. That's a very common thing. What? No, that they don't use in B'nai Brak, in Letterman, they don't use generators. No, they still have gas lamps. Yeah.
So they can adjust them on
You could on Yontif, you could adjust it to make it higher. But that's a whole different. We discussed that discussion last week.
The Rav also said last week about a volume of because Moshe that was not written by the Moshe finds in that, or maybe the suffix. Rav had some said he'd look up something in there.
Yeah, I forgot that he reminded me about it today. Okay, but maybe we'll get to it next week. Okay. Next halacha. This is related. Ner shel shaiva hasharoitzad ladlika b'yomtiv. You have, and this is. I'm going to say something which I know there's some people that buy yahrzeit candles, 2-day yahrzeit candles, 3-day yahrzeit candles, and this yontif, it's only a 1-day yontif. So they want that the candle should go out, and they should be able to use it the next yontif. This is where Jews have their issues.
Stayed in 2 shekels.
Yeah.
Like 3 shekels.
This is a matter of principle. I'll just say, on the subject of kibui, which we're going to learn about, Chacham Ben Zion Shol said that the people have in this country this gas mat, which is a Shon Shabbos that attaches to the gas to turn the gas off. And he said, that costs about 300 shekel, that device. He said, if you keep all the gases on from the time that you got married until the time that you retire from cooking, it will be cheaper than that device.
Now what's the price of the gas now?
No.
You see what we do for Baltashkis?
Yeah, so, but the answer to the question is,
They'll be
the reason why people do it is, for one or two, some people, they claim that it's for safety, because they don't want to have gas on, in their house. And the other thing is, and this I use as a mashal, a person who has a drip in his sink changes the Rosh Beres, right? Why?
It makes noise.
Right, so in other words, the nuisance is the reason that you're doing it, not the financial expense. So the reason why people, you don't want it dripping, that's all.
Yeah, the
So-
water I got, the gas I'm trying to get.
So the people don't want the gas going. It bothers them to see the gas going. It's not that the bill that they're going to get at the end of the month. That's not
It's also in the
What's the
summer.
waste of gas?
right.
Even though
It's and there's many things that people do. As a friend of mine in Yerushalayim, that when they just started using chad pami plates in Yerushalayim, he brought it home and he told his wife, use it. It's cheaper than washing them. And after a week, she said, stop buying them. They're too hard to wash. It has nothing to do with the price. It has to do with the way that you relate to it. So these are issues that are issues.
The one who wants to put out the candle because he wants to keep half of it, that's kibbul litzor gufa, no?
No,
Not litzor gufa.
I don't know what the word tzach gufa
You
means.
said if you want to make a pecham out of it, you want to make something out of it.
Yeah, but that's not why you're being machabed. You're being machabed because you want to save the candle. You're not trying to make pecham. You're trying to save fuel. Yeah, but that's not the subject of what we're going to speak about. Is I am going to do gram kibui to have that happen. Okay. You don't want the whole thing to burn out. You're allowed to put around it something which is going to cause it to go out when it gets to that point.
Putting that on the yontif or before the yontif?
Before you lit it.
Before you lit it. On.
Doesn't make a difference. Yontif, you're allowed to light it on Yontif. But before the candle was ignited, I already preordained when it's going to go out.
It's like the candle is halfway in a cup of water or something.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, something like that. Okay, v'yesh matirin. Okay, now here's where life gets complicated. V'yesh matirin lachtach ner shel shava ba'or. You can cut it with the fire. Dahainu shemadlikim gam lamata kadei lekatzor v'chei noakim. Aval yedei sakin oser. Okay. Okay. Umuter lahamid ner b'makom sharuach shoylet kadei shechaba. I'm allowed to put a candle in a place where the wind is going to put it out, as long as it's not a vada going to happen. Aval also lamida im kvar haruach menashev. I can't put it into the wind. I can't put my thing up to the fan. I could put it into only. We're going to see a little bit. There's a discussion about we're more makel on gram kibui on Yom Tov than we are on Shabbos. There's a long Mishnah Berurah about it in Hilchos Shabbos. Okay, the Mishnah Berurah. The masha chotra l'shtayim oisa kol achas ner b'fnei atzmoi. If you cut a candle, then you made it into two. V'zeh b'chal tikun mona. V'lechotra de'ekor kodim shadlika the mutter l'kuli almok the l'kamon ואינו רואה kim kavanos shesholach hatichas ner lahadlik oira pam acheres. V'miyadlikenu ba'or yidloku shteihem v'lo yishar mu'uma. It's talking about that you're going to have another piece of candle left over. Kodem shadlikenu v'afal gav the kaimelon. It's a fascinating question. In Shimon Lamed Daled, if a person has a fire in his house, he's allowed to tell a goy, kol ha'machaba einu mafsid. So the question is, we say that also you have a fire on your table, you're allowed to pour around the Coca-Cola so that when it gets there, it's going to go out. And there, the fire is already happening, right? When you're pouring the Coca-Cola. So why over here do we make it tonight that you have to do this before the fire is lit? Okay? Avokan agel shayva she muchenes kula lahadloka v'lochein ben shechoyte choyse lekatz ben sheoyse eze davar sviva shechaba psila shagila sham oser. Here it's talking about you're burning up its natural fuel. In other words, your tablecloth was not supposed to be the natural fuel of your candle, right? So therefore, we see it as a separate thing. Zel svaras hamachava. Avakama achroinim cholkim al zev esfilei da'afilu achar shedlika gam ke muter liten davar hamonea milisaraf achar sho'oisa ma'isa beguf davar nilach. As long as you're not doing something to the candle, there are many achroinim who say you're allowed to put something around it to cause it to go out. Davar hamonea milisaraf kigon sheyiten siu achol kehai gavna v'hu adin the muter lichta voisa toch chol tichuach be'inyin shleiba mishuma guma. You're not going to have a problem making a guma. כדי שתגיעו לאחורי חבו. ולפי מה שביארנו כמה אחרונים, דדבר המניע מותר ליתן אפילו אחר הדלקה, according to those opinions that we just mentioned, that even after it's lit, you're allowed to do it, מותר לכתוב אויסר בכל אפילו אחר הדלקה. אבל לא יניח הנר בסיגרטלין אחר הדלקה, או להדביק נר בקייסר, בעניין שיחבר כשיגיע לשם, דהבה לחויתך מן הנר. וזה עושה לכולי עלמא לידי הראשונה. You can't put it in a way that it's going to get cut.
What's going to get cut? The cigarette?
The cigarette or the candle. You're allowed to cause it to go out, but you're not allowed to cut it. Right. Right. Well, however you're cutting it, you're not allowed to do that. There's also because you're doing something in the thing which is lit. I'm just going to say over now, as I mentioned this at some time in the past, that there was a machlokes also about 70 years ago or so, 80 years ago or so, about when a person has gas in their stove and it's on, the gas that's in the big, under the ground, there's someplace this big tank. Is that all called gas of your fire, or that's new gas coming in?
What do you mean?
The nafkamina is if I could go outside and turn off the berries
Big, huge guy.
of the big huge guy.
The whole boat.
For the berries for your apartment, you mean?
Yeah, no, it used to be. You go to Beit Vegan still today. People have on the ground floor under their apartment, they have these two balloons, right? And can you turn off the balloon?
Maybe we have a balloon for like 10 buildings.
I understand.
So
Now,
you turn off for.
yeah, so this is a question, how close you could get and who says what. Most poskim say that it's all considered, since it's free flowing, it's all called part of your candle, and it's usher. There are those who say that it's permissible, but that's a very big machlokes. Okay, and according to those that say that it's permissible, the reason why it's permissible is because it's, according to what we're saying now, it's kiboy. There's some that say that's permissible because it's not kiboy either. You're just not supplying fire. What? The Moshe it was done in his house. Now Rav Moshe in particular held in theory that you could do it on Shabbos also. Not Lamaisa, but in theory he held it could be done on Shabbos. Yes. The Chazon Ish held that it's Issur D'Oraisa. But Now, Reb Nissen writes in Chut Shani, a fascinating thing, that a fire that does not make pechom, like our gas fires, the kibui of that is deraisa. And he has a whole shtickle Torah to it's only on a pechom fire. But he builds it out of a Rashi. He has a fascinating piece.
Backwards. No.
Read it, and then you can say what it sounds like. This is a piece of Torah. Okay. Anyways,
Once we're on this whole subject, what about these new ovens that work with magnets?
those are a disaster. There's no way to use those on Yom Tov as far as I know. Because whenever you take off the pot, you're turning it off. It's like turning off a switch.
The pot is what causes the king.
Yeah, when the pot is off the fire, it's dead.
Stopped.
Yeah. So you can't use that at all on Yom Tov.
Unless technically you take the food out of the pot, maybe?
Yeah, then you're not going to have a pot.
Or your pot's going to get
Right, whatever. Okay. יש מחתיר לאחתך, היינו אפילו אחר הדלגה, ותאימה דעד כאן לא יעשו משום קיבוע מחבה, אלא המסתבק מן השמן שבנר בשעה שהוא דולק, משום שבשעה שמסתבק מקחה אור קצת, you make the or lighter. מה שאין בנר של שייבה, בשעה שחויתך מלמטה, אינו נוגע זה לאור כלל. It doesn't affect the fire at all. ורק לאחר מכאן מה לחבה, so זה בכלל גרם קיבוע בשערי. וכן נוהגים, וכמה אחרונים כוסבו דנוחל נחל כדי ראשונה שאויסר בזה. Now anybody knows how to read well, what did the Mishnah Berurah say? Which way did he paskin? He says that the halacha is like the Ramah, but Nachol Nachmer. Is that what it says?
That's what the Rav says.
One second. What do you say that it says?
I say that. He said that it's Nachal Nachmer, so you should do what? Okay.
No. So let's finish the sentence.
Nachal Nachmer is the correct. If you're stuck, then you can.
What's the halacha? I think so.
You shouldn't do it. The halacha is you shouldn't do it. No, the halacha is you shouldn't do it. I mean, I'm not about you asked me.
No. Now, just for argument's sake, who says that it's mutter? The Ramah. We're Ashkenazim, right? So to go pascha like the Machaber over the Ramah is for the Mishnah Berurah also. He also has a yeah. All right. Anyways, okay. Umuter lahamid ner b'makom shirach shoylet. If it's then that's called that you put it out directly. Okay. Now there's a Bir Halacha over here that I wanted to see. Okay. Let's maybe do this Bir Halacha. Davar Amanei Milisraf. I'm b'Mishnah Berurah shekasavnu kegoyin al yedei chol, to put the candle into chol. V'lein l'tachol l'toich mayim, to put it into a cup of water. Das hataz the b'makom hatzorich sas yesh lahakel. V'ayim b'chebed Moshe shecholik alav. The mayim einu nichnas b'chlal monei al Yisrof, ela b'chlal mekarev kibuyoy k'mavur b'simen reish samachei. It's not called that you're making gram kibui. It's called you are hastening the kibui. And this is, you're not allowed to put a glass. What?
What's the difference between those things?
One is the Gemara, we're afraid that you're going to cause the water to touch the sparks earlier. That's called that you are attacking the fire. Okay? That's not gram kibui. That's you are causing the kibui happen quicker. That's like you're a machaba.
Well, that's called fascinating.
That's you are involved in the kibui.
Okay, I'm putting it in chol.
It goes out by itself.
If you put it in a jar or something.
Oh, it just can't continue
Right.
burning, but water puts out fire.
Right.
There's just
Right. That's basically
So putting it in a jar that to run a rocket. Is that all?
a jar.
In a closed jar, and then it runs out of
But this is you learn in Reish Samachay. You'll see that's we don't allow it to be done on Shabbos because we're afraid it's called your mekarev kibuyoi. Okay. Gam kein lo hitter el rak litzarch davar acher b'yom tov sheni shel golus v'chein agraz b'kudras achron masik sham le'eser v'yishum dedvar v'hem neged kama poiskim im lo litzarch godol mater sham. Oida masha das amag Rav Avrohom Baruch Zachariash v'chi pasivel mitzvos shum Rav Zev after yesh matirim yesh lahachmer. Here we go again. Even according to the yesh matirim yesh lahachmer. So here we have a few cases of things which are not directly being machaba, but we're choishish that it's like you're putting it out directly, and one should not do them. Okay, we'll stop over here.